In 1939. Professor Vera is looking for a summer job. Isaac, the agency recruiter, offers her a position as an assistant for the men. Commenting that she was specifically chosen by them, she becomes cautious, because she does not think she is suitable for the role, but changes her mind when she sees they have even sent advance money. Meanwhile, Isaac's secretary is writing a bunch of invitation letters for the guests who will attend the special party. For the men, in another part of the city, a voice actor is hired to record some lines that are supposedly going to be used in a play. A few days later, Vera is on the train heading to her new job, and can't help but imagine a dangerous rope hanging from the window. Esichi feels even more uncomfortable when she realizes she is being watched by Philip. Then Esichi goes looking for a new place to sit, and after passing by the businessman William, she ends up in the same booth as Lawrence, a retired judge. On a nearby road, Dr. Edward is trying to drive responsibly, but almost has an accident when he is overtaken by Anthony, driving like a maniac. A few hours later, all these people gather at the dock with General John to catch a boat to the Soldiers' Island, where the party will be held. But when they arrive there, they are surprised to find out that the Owens have not arrived. The butler Thomas and his wife. They explain that the hosts will arrive later, and introduce the last two guests, who arrived earlier on their own. Anthony and Emily. The guests then. They settle into their rooms. William makes some notes about the others, because somehow he already had a complete list with everyone's names. Felipe takes a gun from his bag and hides it on the bedside table, and Anthony enjoys an illegal stimulant. The guests also find out that in each room of the house, there is a framed poem called 10 Soldiers, that tells the story of 10 men who gathered for dinner, and died, one by one, in different ways. After that, Vera takes a look around the house and ends up downstairs, only to be stopped by Edel, who points out that this area is for staff only. Esichi explains that she was hired as an assistant, but Edel says that the Owens left explicit instructions to treat her as a guest for the night. Dinner is announced with a gong, and the guests gather in the dining room, where they discover that in the middle of the table, there are 10 figurines, corresponding to the 10 soldiers from the poem. The dinner goes well, with lots of conversation, but the Owens still have not shown up, and Thomas explains that there is no phone to check what happened to them. When the conversation turns to cars, Edward realizes that Anthony is the guy who threw him off the road, but he denies it and sparks an argument. The other guests quickly cut it off, causing Anthony to offer an insincere apology. Very fake. After dinner, the piece is interrupted when a strange voice, coming from a loudspeaker, starts naming all the guests to accuse them of murder, even mentioning the names of their victims. All the guests are offended by this, and demand an explanation. So, Thomas takes them to the room that Vera saw earlier, and reveals that it had been a recording. At that moment, the voice accuses the team members of murder as well, and Thomas has to go see how Edel is doing, because she is having a seizure, panic that makes her faint, while Thomas takes her to her room, so that Edward can examine her. Anthony freaks out and grabs William to demand answers, since supposedly he was a close friend. Like the Owens, he has no choice but to confess that he is a detective, and not a businessman. Edward, prepare a mild remedy to help Hetero sleep, and after he leaves, she freaks out for being discovered, but Thomas tells her to stay quiet. A moment later, everyone gathers to discuss what happened, and Thomas explains that the Owens left instructions to play the record after dinner, but he had no idea of its content. He would not have touched it if he knew, and he explains that he and his wife did not kill anyone, but in a flashback, revealed that he used a pillow to kill their employer previously, while Ethel watched. Anthony and Emily. They deny knowing what the recording was talking about, And Edward explains that the name mentioned in the recording was of a surgical patient. Today, the procedure had the usual complications, and she did not survive. John says his alleged victim was just a soldier who died in the war, and Lawrence explains that he gave the death penalty to a criminal everyone thought was innocent, but he had access to additional evidence. As a judge, William says that his man drowned in his own vomit while he was in jail, and Vera reports that she worked as a housekeeper for a little boy who sneaked away and drowned in the sea when he should not have been swimming. All of these were clearly accidents, but Felipe does not deny his own case and admits that he killed 21 men in Africa. Everyone else calls him a monster, but he emphasizes that he was working, and he was not different from ordinary soldiers. That makes Anthony suddenly remember the names. They were two children who were playing in the dark, and he accidentally ran them over with his car. However, in his memory, it is clear that it was daytime, and he was just driving like a maniac. After telling his story, he takes another sip of his drink and suddenly starts choking. The other guests carefully lower him down on the ground, but when Edward examines him, he confirms that Anthony is already dead. The men take the body to his room and find the stimulants, but William forbids them from hiding it because this is now a police investigation. After that, everyone agrees to go to bed and leave. In the morning, Ethel continues to have nightmares about the night of the crime. But her dream is interrupted by a mysterious knock at the door. Edward also spends the night having nightmares about the operation that went wrong, covered in blood and sorry. He is suddenly awakened in the morning by Thomas, who wants him to examine his wife. Unfortunately, at the moment Eduardo arrives there, he can only confirm that Ethel is already dead a few hours ago. Meanwhile, Felipe decides he will have breakfast with his gun, just as a precaution. When he leaves his room, he finds William looking at Anthony's body and making a discovery. Important. His mouth smells like cyanide. Edward stumbles into Vera, who takes him to the dining room to show that now there is only 8 statuettes on the table. He does not take her seriously, and after he leaves, she has a vision of her former employer, Olivia, who reminds her of the day she lost the boy. Olivia and the boy, Cyril, were having a pleasant day at the beach, and Olivia had to scold him for wanting to swim when he was not strong enough to do that. Later, Cyril's uncle, Hugo, joined them, and Vera fell in love with him instantly. A moment later, everyone has breakfast prepared by Thomas, and Vera keeps insisting on asking about the statuettes, but the others swear they did not touch them. Esichi remains worried, because of the deaths of Anthony and Edsel correspond to the lines of the poem, and Esichi thinks that healthy young people like Anthony do not die out of nowhere. She wonders why Edward brought medicine with him if he came for a party and not to work, which makes him admit that he should treat the lady. Owen. Vera still thinks they should check his suitcase, and Edward finally gives in, but only after pointing out that then they should also check Lawrence's things, because he heard in the cancer class at his clinic. Both bags are checked, but they only find mild medicines, nothing dangerous, and an offended person. Edward flings Vera's suitcase open in revenge. After that, Philip approaches her privately and explains that he killed those men for diamonds, before asking her about her own truth. But she sticks to her story. She loved the boy, and he almost drowned too, trying to save him. Meanwhile, John is packing his things and remembering the day his friend Harry died during the war. He found letters from his wife in Harry's jacket, because they were having an affair behind his back. When he saw Harry again, John pretended everything was fine, but as soon as he turned around, John shot him on the floor below. Felipe is asking Thomas for more information, and he explains that he and his wife have been on the island for a week, but they have never seen anyone except the sailor who brought supplies. Felipe thinks the Owens must be hiding somewhere on the island, and William agrees to go look for them with him. While they search together, William talks about how his prisoner fell into the cell. But actually, he had beaten the poor guy to death. John also goes out for some fresh air. And when Vera sees, she will see how he is. He confesses that his wife died of influenza after the war, and regrets not letting her be happy. He also thinks the boat won't come, and that they are stuck there. After she leaves, John has a vision of Henry haunting him in the house. And Edward, drunk, joins Philip and William in their search. They hear a noise coming from Anthony's room, and Philip rushes in with his gun drawn. But it is only Thomas who was looking for a camping bed that was stored in that room, because he does not want to sleep next to his wife's body. Unlike the guests, he does not have permission to leave when the boat arrives. In the meantime, Vera helps Emily with her wool, and she can hear her story, which she did not want to share in front of the men. She had hired an orphan girl as her maid and taught her everything she knew. But the girl got into trouble, and Emily refused to help her. So the girl gave up. After Vera comes in for tea, Emily realizes that a storm is coming, but the birds are acting strange. When she approaches to check, she discovers they are flying over John, who is now dead. A moment later, the men bring his body inside, and William confirms that this is undoubtedly murder. Vera checks the statuettes again, and notices that another one has disappeared. Remembering how she failed to save Sirio, and scared by all these deaths, she goes to the beach to end everything. But Lawrence stops her and brings her back. Inside the house, the guests hold a meeting to discuss things, and they start asking Philip about his weapon. He explains that he was not invited. He had also been hired by Isaac, regarding Owen's orders, who paid him well to go as a mercenary, ready to act if necessary. Lawrence came because they said a friend of his was there. Emily, because Mrs. Owen would be interested in his work. About education, they told William that someone would come about fakes, and that a police officer would be necessary. So Owen provided a list of guests, and Edward came as a doctor for Mrs. Owen. However, everyone received these invitations through letters, and never got to know the Owens. At that moment, O. Lauren, it is clear that the initials that signed the letters were N. Owen, which sounds like an unknown in English. He thinks this is a riddle, and that the killer is one of them. Meanwhile, Thomas discovers that liver and kidneys are missing from the fridge. The boat never arrives. So when night falls, everyone goes to sleep and locks their doors. He prays for protection and is terrified when she has a vision of her maid appearing beside her. The next morning, Edward desperately knocks on the door downstairs to wake everyone up because he found Thomas dead. The killer used an axe once again, matching a poem, and proving that Vera was right, while Philip and William take the body to his room. She makes coffee, but Emily does not drink it because she can't trust him. Edward approaches Lawrence in particular and, after apologizing for telling everyone about his illness, he proposes an alliance, which he accepts. Sometime later, Vera is walking through the house when she sees something that shocks her and makes her check the statuettes, confirming that another one has disappeared. She then rings the gong to call everyone and show that Emily is also dead. The killer used a knitting needle to imitate the bee sting from the poem. After taking Emily's body to her bed, Felipe returns to his room, only to find that his gun is missing. He calls a meeting and points out that he had locked his room, which means that someone must have a master key. A discussion begins, while they start accusing each other mutually of being the murderer, and pay close attention only when William offers as an alibi the fact that he was constipated in the bathroom. After that, they search every room looking for the weapon, and even undress to wear only a towel or a robe, in order to avoid hiding anything in their clothes. She changes and puts on the swimsuit that she was wearing the day Sirio died, which makes her remember how he wanted her to marry Hugo and become his aunt. When she looks at herself in the mirror, she finally notices there is a hook, strange in her ceiling. Later, when Vera sees Felipe only in a towel, she decides to untie the knot of her robe as a silent method of flirting. And they agree to start calling each other by their first names, unaware that Edward is watching them. All the rooms are clean, so the group starts searching the rest of the house. But they do not find anything for dinner. They eat straight from the cans, to make sure nothing is poisoned. While the gun and the key are hidden inside a bare rug. Later, while they drink, Vera keeps thinking about Sirio is a conversation she had with his mother. Olivia explained that she did not know she was pregnant when her husband died. Then Hugo intervened to inherit everything. But when Sirio arrived, all his dreams of fortune were destroyed. Vera decides she wants to make some tea, and everyone goes with her to the kitchen for safety. The men take the chance to ask Lawrence about all the death sentences he issued, and he admits he was going to see each criminal die, because it was his responsibility. In the recording, he had accused him of killing Seaton, that the news thought to be innocent. But Lawrence had received his diaries, where he wrote down all the dirty things he did. Seaton was different, because he refused the hood to be able to look Lawrence in the eyes as he died. And that look still haunts him. Hearing the word haunt makes Vera see Sirio standing nearby. But it also makes her remember getting involved intimately with Hugo on the beach. After that, Lawrence goes to the living room to read, and Vera returns to her room. While she washes her face, Cyril appears behind her, and suddenly, a hand appears in the sink and tries to kill her, as his memories of his death flood his mind. Felipe and Edward arrive in the room, to find her on the floor, as she explains that she had a panic attack. She refuses the brandy that William brings, because she is suspicious. So Felipe goes to find a sealed bottle. The group starts drinking and arguing about the strange hook in Vera's fourth room. But suddenly, they realize that Lawrence did not come when she screamed. They run downstairs, and discover that Lawrence was shot in his reading chair. Exactly as the poem says. The body is taken to the corresponding room, and while everyone argues over accusations, Vera discovers that yet another statuette is gone. The group hates the fact that they might be waiting to die, so they decide to throw a party, where they get drunk and consume the stimulants from Anthony. While they listen to the recording with the accusations, Felipe and Vera get very close while dancing, and Edward tells William about his suspicions that the young couple are working together. Felipe promises Vera that he will protect her, and when it is time for everyone to go to bed, he follows her to her room, so they can spend the night together. Meanwhile, William thinks about the night when his prisoner died. The poor boy had been accused of observing other men in an inappropriate manner in a public restroom, and he tries to imagine himself letting the guy go. But even in his imagination, he ends up killing the guy. At that moment, William hears a noise and leaves the room to find Edward running down the stairs. Then he goes to call Felipe so they can go after him together. Vera is left alone in the room, and begins to think about the past again. While she was in the hospital, after nearly drowning trying to save Cyril, she received a visit from Hugo, who acted very coldly towards her. He told her that she was fired because there were no more children for her to take care of, but he left some money. He refused to see her again. Sometime later, Philip and William return without having found Edward. But Philip finds his weapon simply thrown on the bed, and another statuette disappears. Vera remembers that the next death, it is a false lead, and thinks that Edward is still alive, especially because the party was his idea. William starts to wonder if they are all already dead and if this is hell. Finally admitting that he killed his prisoner, and Felipe has to calm him down. After that, he starts looking for Edward, just to see, suddenly, a huge bear coming after him. Felipe and Vera head to the cliff, with the intention of starting a bonfire that could attract the attention of a boat. But they realize that William did not go with them. They return home and find him dead on the rug, made of bear, matching the zoo bear from the poem. Now only 2 figurines remain on the table. So Philip and Vera return to the cliff, noticing something in the rocks now that the tide has gone out. It turns out that it is Edward who is also dead. Vera asks Philip to move the body, but as soon as he turns around, she steals the gun from his pocket. Thinking that he is the murderer, he tries to take her gun, and in the struggle, his shoulder is hit. Vera then fires all the remaining bullets, until he is dead. While suffering a breakdown, she remembers the day when she testified in court about Sirio's death being an accident. She explained that she ran as fast as she could to save him, but she did not arrive on time, and everyone believed her, except Hugo. When they talked in private, he pointed out that he saw her running while they were playing, and that she was very fast. Therefore, he believed that she had slowed down on purpose to let Sirio die. Vera denied that, but in her memory, it is revealed that Sirio did not run away from Fininho. Vera told him to go swimming, and she really slowed down. She waited on purpose so that Hugo could inherit the money. At that moment, she sees Cyril again, who takes her back home to show that the hook in your room now has a rope. Vera gets on the chair and decides to give up, like in the poem, just to change her mind. When she sees the door open and Lawrence go into shock, she accidentally kicks the chair, then tries her best to stay standing, while barely breathing and listening to what Lawrence has to say. The thing is, the Owenses do not exist, and everything had been his plan to seek justice for all the people the guests killed. He had faked his own death, using the liver and kidneys he stole from the fridge, and everyone believed the doctor when he confirmed it. But Edward had lied for the sake of their alliance. Lawrence explained that Seaton's diaries were not made public because they were too disturbing. But they awakened something in him, and when Seaton looked at him as he died, Lawrence finally understood that they were the same. His tumor never got better, and he plans to use the weapon to match his own death with the poem. That way, the police will find 10 bodies, but no killer, because they will be after the non-existent Owens. Vera says there are no bullets left for him, so they should lie together and tell the police that Felipe killed them all. Then Lauren moves the chair and finally kills Vera, while revealing that he still has the bullet he took from the gun to forge his own death. After that, he goes to the dining room and gathers the 10 statuettes. Again, he sets up the chairs and drinks to make it seem like he had company. Then he uses the gun to carry out a plan, just like the poem.